"You're too old to start over, Nana." That's what my grandson Eli said to me on a rainy Tuesday morning in Cleveland, like he was reading off a grocery list. No warmth. No guilt. Just that flat tone people use when they're already done with you. If you're listening right now, tell me where you're from, or what time it is for you, because this family betrayal almost broke me. My name is Lorraine and I'm 67. I've buried a husband, raised children, and spent my whole life being the woman everyone leans on. The fixer. The peacekeeper. The one who swallows pain so the family can smile for pictures. But when my husband died, something changed in my family. Not overnight. Slowly. Like rotten wood. For months, my daughter Melinda and her husband Derek had been pushing me. "Mom, sell the house. Mom, get something smaller. Mom, that place is too much." They said it with sweet voices, but it always felt like pressure. Like they weren't worried about me. They were impatient with me. That house wasn't just property. It was my life. It was the kitchen where my husband used to dance with me when the radio played old songs. It was the porch where my kids waited for the school bus. It was the one place that still felt like mine after grief took so much. So I always said no. Until Melinda called one afternoon, crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Mom, Derek's job isn't stable," she said. "Things are tight. We might have to move. We're stressed." I asked questions. Real ones. "What happened? How bad is it? What do you need?" Her voice changed. "We don't need money, Mom. We need a solution." Then Derek took the phone. And Derek always spoke to me like I was slow. Like I should be grateful, he was explaining. "Lorraine," he said, "your house is an asset. It's just sitting there. You could sign it over to us and you can still live there. It would make everything easier. No probate issues. No complications." I felt my stomach twist. "So you want my house?" "Don't say it like that," Melinda snapped and then softened her voice fast. "It's for protection." Protection. That word sounded pretty, but it landed like a threat. The next day Eli called me. My first grandbaby. The one I used to rock to sleep. "Nana," he said, "Mom says you don't trust us." "Baby," I told him gently, "trust doesn't mean signing away your life." He went quiet, then he said it. The line that still burns in my chest. "You're too old to start over, Nana. So why are you holding on so tight?" I didn't even know how to answer. I just sat there with the phone in my hand, realizing my own grandson sounded like he was repeating somebody else's script. That night I wrote down everything I owned. My house. My accounts. My documents. I don't know why I did it at first. Maybe instinct. Maybe survival. 2 weeks later they showed up in Cleveland like it was a family visit. Smiles. Hugs. Dinner and bags. Compliments too loud to be real. Then Derek slid a folder across my table. "Just paperwork," he said. "Quick and simple." I opened it. A deed transfer. Immediate. Not after I pass. Not in case of emergency. No. I looked up at my daughter. "Melinda, what is this?" And that's when she stabbed me with the sharpest betrayal of all. "Mom," she said quietly, "you're not well." I blinked. "Excuse me." She swallowed like she was forcing herself to be brave. "You forget things. You repeat stories. You get emotional. Derek thinks it could be early dementia." Dementia. They weren't just trying to take my home. They were trying to take my credibility. My voice. My mind. And the worst part? Eli didn't defend me. He just crossed his arms and said, "Nana, don't make this harder than it has to be." That's when I understood the truth. They didn't want to help me. They wanted to handle me. And what they didn't know was this. While they were building a lie to ruin me, I had already started building my own plan. They told people I was confused. That was the sentence that made everything crystal clear. If you've ever been betrayed by your own family, stay with me, because this is where the mask finally slipped. The week after they tried to make me sign away my house, the phone calls started coming in. Not from Melinda. Not from Derek. From people who weren't supposed to be involved at all. My church friend Ruth called first. Her voice was gentle, careful. Too careful. "Lorraine," she said, "Melinda mentioned you've been overwhelmed lately. She asked if I'd check on you." Check on me. Then my neighbor Tom asked if I needed help remembering trash day. Then my cousin from Pennsylvania texted, "Hope you're doing okay. If you need support, we're here." Support. They were planting a story. Quietly. Politely. Strategically. The kind of story that makes people tilt their heads and whisper, "Oh, that's sad." That's when I realized this wasn't just a family disagreement. This was a reputation assassination. I didn't confront them. Not yet. That I watched. I noticed Melinda suddenly insisting on helping with my mail. I noticed Derek asking where I kept my important documents. I noticed Eli correcting me mid-sentence like I was a child. "No, Nana, you already told us that." "No, Nana, that's not how it happened." "No, Nana, you're mixing things up again." Each time my chest burned. Because I wasn't mixing anything up. I remembered everything. And I wrote everything down. Dates. Conversations. Who said what? When? How often? Then something happened that confirmed my worst fear. One afternoon I came home from the grocery store and found my front door unlocked. I never leave my door unlocked. Inside nothing looked disturbed. No drawers pulled out. No mess. But my filing cabinet, the one in the hallway closet, had been opened. Folders shifted. Papers not where I left them. I stood there with my keys still in my hand, heart pounding. They had a key. Melinda had a spare. Always had. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of cold tea and made a decision that changed everything. I called a lawyer. Not the flashy kind. Not the billboard kind. A quiet woman named Janice who specialized in elder law. When I told her everything, she didn't interrupt. She didn't rush me. She just listened. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Lorraine, they're setting you up for a conservatorship." I felt the room spin. "You mean control?" "Yes," she said calmly. "Your finances. Your property. Your decisions. Once they label you unfit, it's very hard to undo." I swallowed hard. "Can they do that?" "They can try," she said. "But only if you let them." The next few days moved fast. Janice helped me lock down my accounts. Change my will. Remove access. Document everything. Then she told me the most important thing. "Do not warn them," she said. "Let them believe their story is working." So I did. I played the role they'd written for me. I forgot small things on purpose. I let Melinda correct me. I let Derek sigh loudly like I was exhausting. I even apologized. "I'm just so tired lately," I told them softly. "I'm sorry if I've been difficult." They ate it up. Derek started talking freely again. About money. About next steps. About how soon things could be simplified. Melinda began sending me links to assisted living facilities. Eli stopped calling me Nana. He started calling me Grandma. Formal. Distant. Like I was already fading. And the whole time I smiled. Because while they thought I was unraveling, I was preparing. I gathered documents they didn't know existed. I recorded conversations. Legally. I had witnesses. Professionals. Paper trails. And then came the moment that proved exactly how far they were willing to go. Melinda invited me to dinner. "Just us," she said. "Family." But when I arrived, Derek was there. And so was a stranger. A woman with a clipboard. "Mom," Melinda said gently, "this is just a formality. She's here to assess you." Assess me. In my own daughter's dining room. That's when I realized something else. They weren't waiting anymore. They were moving in for the final step. And they had no idea what was about to hit them. They brought a stranger to judge me. That was the moment I stopped pretending this was about concern. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most, stay with me, because this is where the truth started to crack through their lies. The woman with the clipboard smiled like she was doing charity work. "Mrs. Whitman," she said, sitting across from me at Melinda's dining table. "I'm just here to ask a few simple questions." Simple. Derek stood behind her with his arms crossed. Melinda sat beside him, hands folded, eyes fixed on the table. Eli leaned against the counter, scrolling on his phone like none of this involved him. My own family had assembled an audience. The woman asked my name, the date, who the president was, where I lived. I answered calmly, Prairie. Then she tilted her head and asked, "Do you ever feel confused or forgetful?" Melinda jumped in before I could finish my sentence. "She's been repeating stories a lot lately." Derek nodded. "And misplacing important things." I looked at them slowly. "Like what?" They froze. The woman scribbled something on her paper. "Do you feel safe living alone?" That's when it clicked. They weren't testing my memory. They were testing how much I would resist. So I leaned back in my chair and sighed. Soft. Tired. Convincing. Well, I said, I suppose I do get overwhelmed sometimes. Melinda's head snapped up. I continued, it's hard keeping track of everything at my age. Derek smiled for the first time that evening. The woman nodded sympathetically. That's very honest of you. Honest. After 30 minutes she packed up her clipboard and stood. I'll prepare my report. Thank you all. When the door closed behind her, Melinda rushed over and hugged me. Mom, this is for your own good, she whispered. We just want to help. Help. That word again. I patted her back slowly. I know, sweetheart. Derek poured himself a drink. You did great, he said. This is going to make things so much easier. Easier for who? I left shortly after. Drove home with my hands steady on the wheel, my heart pounding like a drum. Because now I knew their endgame. Once that report labeled me declining, they'd file paperwork. Once paperwork was filed, control would shift. And once control shifted, my house would be gone. They'd tell everyone it was necessary. Responsible. Sad but unavoidable. And I would become the family cautionary tale. That night I didn't cry. I opened my laptop. I emailed Janice. They made their move, I wrote. So will I. The next morning I went for my annual physical. Same doctor I'd had for 20 years. A man who knew me, trusted me, and had watched me raise my kids. I told him everything. He listened. Then he ran a full cognitive evaluation. Memory tests. Reasoning. Processing. When he finished he smiled. Lorraine, he said, you're sharper than most people half your age. I felt something loosen in my chest. He signed a formal statement. Clear. Undeniable. Then I visited my financial advisor. Then my bank. Then my lawyer. By the end of the week I had a folder so thick it could have stopped a door. Medical clearance. Legal protections. Revoked permissions. Updated will. And one more thing. A recorded voicemail. From Derek. He'd called me 2 nights earlier, annoyed I wasn't answering. Lorraine, he said, irritated, you need to cooperate. If you keep fighting this, we'll have no choice but to take further steps. Think about what that'll look like for you. Threat. Clear as day. I saved it. Then I waited. Melinda called 3 days later. Mom, she said sweetly, we're scheduling a family meeting. Just to discuss next steps. I smiled into the phone. Of course, I said. I'll be there. They thought this meeting would end me. They thought I'd finally fold. They had no idea I was walking in with proof. And when I tell you what happened at that table, you'll understand why you should never mistake kindness for weakness. They thought I was coming to surrender. That's what makes what happened next so unforgettable. If you've ever been underestimated by your own blood, listen closely. The family meeting was set for Sunday afternoon at Melinda's house. Same place they tried to label me confused. Same dining table where they thought they'd cornered me. I arrived 10 minutes early. On purpose. Melinda looked startled when she opened the door. Mom, you're early. I didn't want to forget, I said softly, playing the role they'd written for me. Derek was already seated, laptop open, papers stacked neatly like a presentation. Eli sat beside him, arms crossed, jaw tight. He barely looked at me. No hugs. No warmth. Just business. We sat. Derek cleared his throat. Lorraine, we're glad you came. This is about making sure everyone feels safe moving forward. Safe. I nodded. Of course. Melinda slid a document toward me. This just outlines temporary steps. Oversight. Assistance. Nothing permanent. Temporary control has a way of becoming permanent. I didn't touch the paper. Instead, I reached into my purse and pulled out my own folder. Thick. Organized. Heavy enough to make the table creak when I set it down. Derek frowned. What's that? My turn, I said calmly. Silence. I opened the folder and slid the first document across to Melinda. Medical clearance, I said. Full cognitive evaluation. Conducted last week. Melinda's hands trembled as she read. Her face drained of color. Derek leaned over. His mouth opened then closed. I continued. Statement from my physician of 20 years, I said, flipping the page. Legally binding. States I am fully competent and independent. Eli finally looked at me. Real fear flickered in his eyes. Then I played the voicemail. Derek's voice filled the room. If you keep fighting this, we'll have no choice but to take further steps. I paused it. That, I said gently, is a threat. Melinda's chair scraped loudly as she stood. Mom, you recorded us? I protected myself, I corrected. Derek's face hardened. This is unnecessary drama. No, I said. This is accountability. I slid the next document forward. Revoked access, I explained. Bank accounts. Legal authority. Spare keys. Eli shot to his feet. You changed the locks? Yes, I said. Yesterday. His mouth fell open. Nana. I am not finished, I said, and my voice stopped him cold. I looked at my grandson. Really looked at him. I loved you before you learned how to speak, I said quietly. But you do not get to help erase me. Melinda started crying. We were just trying to help. No, I said. You were trying to control. Derek slammed his hand on the table. You're making a mistake. I smiled. Not sweet. Not soft. No, I said. I'm correcting one. I stood and gathered my folder. Any further attempts to question my competence will go through my lawyer, I said. Any use of that report will be contested. They stared at me like I was a stranger. As I was. I wasn't the woman they thought they could manage anymore. As I walked to the door, Eli called out, his voice cracking. Nana, wait. I turned. This doesn't have to end like this, he said. I nodded once. Then it shouldn't have started like that. I left. And for the first time in months my chest felt light. But this wasn't over. Because betrayal doesn't end when it's exposed. It ends when consequences arrive. And they were just beginning. They thought the worst was behind them. That's what happens when people confuse silence with surrender. If you've ever watched consequences move slowly at first, then all at once keep listening. For a few weeks after that family meeting, everything went quiet. Too quiet. No calls from Melinda. No texts from Derek. No half-hearted apologies wrapped in excuses. Eli didn't reach out either. And that hurt more than I expected. I'd sit at my kitchen table in the mornings, sunlight spilling across the same wood my husband once fixed with his own hands, and I'd feel that familiar ache. Not loneliness. Betrayal has a different weight. It sits heavier, colder. But peace has a way of attracting truth. And truth has a way of traveling. The first crack appeared at church. Ruth, the same woman who'd checked on me, pulled me aside after service. Lorraine, she whispered, eyes wide, I owe you an apology. I waited. I spoke to Melinda, she said. She told me you were declining. Confused. I repeated it. I shouldn't have. I nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me. He swallowed. People are starting to ask questions. Good. Then my neighbor Tom brought over mail that had been misdelivered. You know, he said casually, Derek asked me last month if I'd noticed you slipping. Didn't sit right with me. Another crack. A week later Janice called me. They filed paperwork, she said. Not conservatorship. Something smaller. Power of attorney request. I closed my eyes. And it was denied. Immediately. The judge cited lack of evidence and possible coercion. I exhaled. But that wasn't the end. Because when control fails, people try shame. Melinda sent a long email. No greeting. No warmth. She wrote about stress. About fear. About how I embarrassed the family. About how Derek felt attacked. About how Eli was confused and hurt. Not once did she say sorry. I didn't respond. 2 days later, Eli showed up at my door. No warning. I opened it and there he was. My grandson, taller than I remembered, eyes tired, shoulders heavy. Can I come in? He asked quietly. I stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table where this whole nightmare had begun. He stared at his hands. Mom says you're punishing us. I tilted my head. Do you feel punished? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, I didn't think it would go this far. That sentence told me everything. You thought what? I asked gently. That I'd sign? That I'd disappear quietly? His jaw tightened. Dad said you were just scared of change. And what did you think? He finally looked up at me. His eyes were wet. I thought, Nana, I thought you were being stubborn. I nodded. And now? He swallowed. Now I think we were wrong. I didn't rush him. Didn't comfort him. Betrayal needs space to be understood. I heard Mom crying last night, he continued. Dad's angry. He keeps saying you won. I leaned forward. This was never about winning, Eli. He nodded slowly. I know. Then he said something that made my chest ache. I told people you were confused. There was the lie spoken aloud. I closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them, I met his gaze. That's a heavy thing to carry, I said. Especially when it's not true. Tears slid down his face. I'm sorry. I believed him. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I love you, I told him. But love doesn't mean I let people rewrite my life. He nodded. I understand. When he left, I sat alone for a long time. Because some apologies heal. And some just mark the place where something broke. But Derek wasn't done. And when his final move came, it told me exactly who he'd always been. He tried one last time. And this time he didn't come with papers. He came with a lie big enough to ruin me. If you've ever seen desperation turn cruel, stay with me. It started with a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A letter. Official looking. Thick paper. Serious language. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the return address. Adult Protective Services. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I sat at my kitchen table, the same one Derek once tried to turn into a courtroom, and opened it slowly. Someone had filed a report. Anonymous. Claiming I was being neglected. That I was confused. That I was financially vulnerable. That I might be a danger to myself. I didn't need a signature to know who it came from. Derek. This wasn't about control anymore. This was punishment. I called Janice immediately. She sighed. A tired knowing sound. I was afraid he might try this. Can they do anything? I asked. They can investigate, she said. But only if there's something to find. There wasn't. 2 days later, a caseworker knocked on my door. Her name was Angela. Mid-30s. Kind eyes. Clipboard again. Funny how betrayal always comes with a clipboard. Mrs. Whitman, she said gently, I'm here to check in. Of course, I said, stepping aside. Come in. I made tea. Real tea. Not rushed. Not nervous. She asked questions. I answered. Calm. Clear. Grounded. Then I handed her my folder. Medical clearance. Financial statements. Legal documents. Witness letters. She read. Fully. When she looked up, something in her expression shifted. May I ask, she said carefully, who suggested you might be unfit? My son-in-law, I replied. After I refused to sign over my house. She closed the folder. That explains a lot. Before she left, she said something I'll never forget. You are not our concern, she said quietly. But someone else might be. 3 days later, Derek called me. Not angry. Not threatening. Polite. Lorraine, he said, we need to talk. No, I replied. Pause. Then frustration slipped through. You're taking this too far. I laughed. A small laugh. Said, you reported me to the state. You left me no choice, he snapped. No, I said calmly. You just don't like losing. He lowered his voice. If you keep this up, you're going to tear this family apart. That's when I said the last thing he ever expected to hear. You did that, I told him. The moment you tried to erase me. He hung up. The fallout was fast. EPS closed the case. Documented the false report. Flagged Derek's name. Janice filed a formal notice of harassment. And then quietly, beautifully, consequences landed. Derek's employer called Melinda in for a conversation. About ethics. About false reports. About liability. Eli stopped defending him. Melinda stopped calling me. And Derek? He disappeared. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just faded. Like someone whose power had finally been taken away. One afternoon I sat on my porch watching the leaves shift in the fall air and realized something surprising. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Done explaining. Done justifying. Done shrinking. Because betrayal doesn't break you when you face it. It breaks you when you pretend it isn't happening. And I had stopped pretending. They thought I'd come crawling back. That's the funny thing about betrayal. People always expect forgiveness to look like submission. If you're still here with me, listen closely. This is where it ends. Months passed. Not the dramatic kind. No shouting. No scenes. Just silence. Melinda stopped calling altogether. Derek vanished from every family gathering like a ghost who knew he wasn't welcome. Eli sent a few careful texts at first, holidays, birthdays, but even those slowed. Distance settled in, heavy and permanent. And for the first time in my life I let it. I didn't chase anyone. I didn't explain myself. I didn't beg to be understood. I focused on me. I repainted the living room the color my husband always wanted but never got around to. I planted herbs in the backyard and talked to them like old friends. I joined a book club at the library and made new acquaintances who didn't know my past, and didn't try to rewrite it. Peace felt unfamiliar at first. Then it felt earned. One afternoon Eli showed up again. Older. Quieter. Different. I'm moving out, he told me. I can't live in that house anymore. I nodded. That's a brave choice. He swallowed. Dad says you ruined everything. I met his eyes. People say that when they lose control. He sat at my table, the same table where they once tried to take everything from me, and said something I never thought I'd hear. I should have stood up for you. I didn't rush to comfort him. I know, I said gently. That was the moment he finally grew up. As for Melinda, we speak now. Carefully. Cordially. Not warmly. Some relationships don't die. They just change shape. And Derek? I haven't heard his voice since that last call. But I heard about him. He lost his job within the year. Burned bridges. Moved cities. Funny how people who accuse you of being unstable can't seem to stand firm themselves. Sometimes justice doesn't shout. Sometimes it whispers and walks away. I'm still in my house. Still independent. Still sharp. And I've learned something I wish I'd known earlier. Being a grandmother doesn't mean being disposable. Being kind doesn't mean being weak. And family doesn't get to erase you just because you're inconvenient. If you're listening to this and someone in your life is trying to make you smaller, trust yourself. Write things down. Protect your voice. And never let anyone convince you that your story isn't yours to tell. Because once I stopped trying to be the glue, I finally became free. If this story spoke to you, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video if you've ever faced betrayal from family. Subscribe to Mabel's Stories for more real, emotional stories like this. Share this with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. And tell me, where are you listening from right now, or what time is it for you? Sometimes one small comment is enough to say, I was here.